Hello everybody, you're very welcome back to Law Hero. My name is Jen, I make videos about the law. And today we're going to talk about ESG, Environmental Social Governance. Now, this topic has been all over LinkedIn and all over law firm websites. Everybody's trying to get ahead of it, everybody's talking about it. And today I just wanted to talk about it in terms of its impact on young lawyers, and if you're a trainee and if you've heard about it and you don't really know what it is, or if you're just generally interested in what it could mean, this video is for you. It'll give you just a crash course before you go into the law firm and kind of help you out so you're not struggling and wondering about the concept. So to start off, we'll look at a definition of what ESG is. So it stands for Environmental Social Governance, and it refers to the three key factors when measuring the sustainability and ethical impact of an investment in a business or a company. And it's something that socially responsible investors check. They check the ESG criteria prior to investment. And in the capital markets, which is where money is borrowed and lent, when you're looking to invest in a company or property, whatever it is, the company that owns a property, you're going to check the ESG ratings as well as their future financial performance. So it serves as like a benchmark for a global sustainable standard. When I say financial, everybody understands what financial performance is, but ESG performance is seen as kind of parallel to financial performance, and ESG is considered a subset of non-financial performance indicators, which includes ethical, sustainable and corporate governance issues. So as I've said, the three factors are ESG. When you think of environmental, and we're going to go into this properly in a minute, you think of how the business performs as a steward for the environment. So like waste and pollution, resource depletion, greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, climate change. When you think of social, and this is where like the double materiality concept comes in, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It is the business's impact on the social environment around it, but also the social environment's impact on the business. So for example, when we talk of the S in ESG, we're talking about employee relations, diversity, including neurodiversity, working conditions, whether you use child labour in your supply chain or modern slavery, the impact you're having on local communities, health and safety. And then the final piece is governance, and that is how you manage your policies around environment and social. So for example, not just environmental and social, but everything really. It's just your governance roadmap as a whole, like your compliance ability. So things, for example, like your tax strategy, like if you think of Apple's tax strategy, what is that? How you pay your top management, what kind of donations you make, what is your political lobbying, is there corruption and bribery, what kind of diversity is there on your board, is there a board structure, that kind of a thing. So it really comes down to your ABCs, anti-corruption, bribery, and your conduct around those. Typical compliance style governance. I made this ebook, and I'll actually link it for all of you for free if you just want to have it when you're going into your next rotation, or if you're going into the law firm. So basically it just goes down through the basics of ESG for lawyers. And I suppose the next part then is like, what are your legal obligations as a company? So there are several obligations on companies to report this kind of thing, but I'm just going to go through the most important ones with you. So the first regulation is the EU Taxonomy Regulation 2020, and this comes under the sustainable finance piece, and it basically defines what environmentally sustainable activities should be, and it classifies investments as economically sustainable. So it's for investors. And basically the classification is done through achieving objectives. So the objectives are climate change mitigation and adaptation, sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources, transition to a circular economy, pollution prevention and control, and the protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. And in case you didn't know, a circular economy is defined as follows: production and consumption in an economy that involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products for as long as possible. It aims to tackle global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, waste, and pollution by emphasizing the design-based implementation of the three basic principles of the model, which is reuse, refurbish, and recycle. Okay, so there's two obligations from the European Taxonomy Regulation on companies. The first is for financial market participants. They must make statements about the alignment of their investments with the taxonomy regulation when making available financial products. And the second one is for large public interest entities. They must include information about how their activities align with the taxonomy regulation in the non-financial disclosure part of their financial statements. So they are obliged to do that. So before there was the EU taxonomy regulation, there was the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, and this came before it. And the SFDR actually has the definitions initially of what these companies are who have to disclose. So just know that those two work together. So let's look at the S in ESG. Now, when you think of the S in ESG, think of all of the movements to level the playing field for people. That's how I think about it. So it's basically the laws relating to the treatment of people, so human beings. So like in a domestic context in Ireland, you think of things like the Work-Life Balance Act, Gender Pay Gap, Protected Disclosures, EU Transparency Directive, which is the Gender Pay Gap Act, Gender Balance in Business Survey, and Sick Leave Act. These are all to help people adjust to the workplace, come back to the workplace, be better represented in the workplace. They're all kind of employment-related laws. Then when you think of the concepts relating to the S, you think of EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And what that basically is a commitment to diversity and inclusion, and kind of an acknowledgement that it affects your profitability. And then diversity, then most businesses are starting to accept that if you have a diverse work population, that your corporate governance will be better, you will attract more talent, you will have, more human capital, and you will be more long-term competitive. And you do this through having equality, call out discrimination, have equal status for your workers. You assist minorities get into the workplace. You assist people with disabilities getting into the workplace, including those who are neurodivergent. And then on your board level, then you try and reflect diversity as best you can. The other side then to the S in ESG is environmental health and safety. So for example, that, if you're building, you have concepts like lean construction and other green construction methodologies like the passive house methodology. and that you have due diligence on your supply chain if you're manufacturing. The next one then is, are you giving back to your community? So for example, what's your relationship with your suppliers? What's the relationship with the local community? Do you have a CSR policy? Do employees like working there? Like, do you survey them with like great place to work? Is there a high employee turnover? What do your customers say about you? What kind of relationships do you have locally? And then the final one then is human rights and the rule of law. So as I said, the supply chain piece, and that you break ties with suppliers who have been involved in human trafficking, modern slavery, child labor, that you make a commitment not to deal with those suppliers. That would be the S in ESG. And then the final one then, as I've already mentioned, governance. Governance corporate governance is really, really broad. And, you know, as I said, you have the anti-corruption piece, the bribery, and all of that, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Actually, I'm going to talk about the hard governance piece in ESG at the moment, which I've already mentioned before, is the CSRD, and I'm going to lead into that. So, as I said earlier, before you had the SFDR and the EU taxonomy regulations. They are seen as disclosures you have to make when you're dealing with finance. But now the reporting side of it, the non-financial reporting side of it, has been extended. So there was an accounting directive in 2013 which had some non-financial information required, but then in 2014 we got an NFRD, the non-financial reporting directive, and that was for large companies. But now, since 2022, we've moved away from the NFRD and we now have the CSRD, which is the one that everybody's talking about. So it came into effect in January 2023, and it substantially deepens the level of information reporting requirements. It applies to all large public interest entities with over 500 employees. It's focusing on non-financial and diversity information disclosures. So if you had been doing this reporting already, this won't be a big jump for you, but if you hadn't, it will. So the CSRD broadens the scope of companies who are obliged to report, encompassing all large companies and listed entities regardless of their employee count. And this is part of the EU's broader goals under the Green Deal and Sustainable Finance Agenda. So it requires to be transposed into national law of EU member states on the 6th of July 2024. So that's why we're all talking about it this year. So there has been different commencement dates to accommodate the scale of companies who are going to be obliged to report. So if you were already subject to the NFRD, you will be reporting from the 1st of January 2024. Next year, so the 1st of January 2025, you have 6 months to get ready from July 2024. Companies who were not subject to the NFRD are now within scope. And then from the 1st of January 2026, listed SMEs will be included unless they have an opt-out provision until 2028. And then from the 1st of January 2028, for non-EU companies meeting specific criteria, they will also have to report. Now, these thresholds were adjusted last September because of the rise of inflation and the cost of businesses having to do CSRD reporting. So how will the reporting be done? Well, there's a European Sustainability Reporting Standard, ESRS, and they're the ones who provided the framework for sustainability reporting. And those standards are created by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, or EFRAG, and they assist the European Commission in that. Now they're calling it sector agnostic, which means it just applies to all of them, to all companies. And what the EFRAG are looking for is an annual report from in-scope companies in their management or director's report on ESG matters such as climate change, biodiversity, and human rights in accordance with the ESRS. CSRD disclosures generally are subject to a double materiality standard and include disclosures relating to certain forward-looking information and information on the value chain. And as I said before, the double materiality concept requires companies to consider both how social issues impact their business and how they impact social issues. So from a legal perspective, this means identifying and reporting social risks to your business and the impact you have on society. Now, the big question is around subsidiaries, because if your parent company is doing this report, do you need to do it? So subsidiaries are exempted from the CSRD reporting obligation if their parent is producing a consolidated sustainability report that conforms with the CSRD. So what will happen in practice is the subsidiaries will feed up to their parent, and then the parent will produce a consolidated report. If you're exempted subsidiary, they must include in their management report the name, registered office of the parent undertaking that is reporting sustainability information at group level, the web links to the consolidated management report, and a reference of this exemption in their own management report. If a subsidiary avails of the exemption from entity only reporting on that basis, that it is sustainability information is included in the consolidated reporting of its parent, it is expected that the Irish subsidiary will be required to file the consolidated parent report with the Irish Companies Registration Office, which will make the report available to the public. Because this is the thing, the public need to be informed as to the CSRD report, and it's going to be done on a corporate basis. And when you think of corporate reporting, you think of the CRO. So that's how it's going to be done in practice. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. I think it's very interesting. I think we all need to be very much aware of what our obligations are under the CSRD in particular, just because of its scope. And yeah, if you have any questions, please ask me below, and I'll see you in the next one.